Hello, fellow detectives. Welcome to Unlocked, the official podcast for all things Nancy Drew by Her Interactive. I am your host, Tammy Tuckey, and this week we welcome voiceover artist Julia Francis to the show. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm so honored to be here.
It's great to have you on the show because, a lot of us kind of remember your credit as Julie Raleigh. So I just want to let our listeners know there is no, you aren't, seeing double. We're very glad to have you on the show, of course, to talk about Nancy and how you've played over almost four different characters for 4 different games. So let's talk about how you got introduced to Nancy in the first place. Did you read the books or had you heard about some of the games from the 90s beforehand or the TV show?
Well, I definitely grew up reading the books and was really always taken with the illustrations on the covers and just spent so much time in my imagination filling out the worlds of that single image on the book covers. And then as a professionally trained actress, I was so thrilled when I was invited to come in to Her Interactive and work with them on the actual games themselves. And such an incredible, powerful company that continues to inspire so many people, particularly young women. And I am just honored to be part of the legacy of this continuing story and franchise that really, I think, empowers particularly women to be curious and to be adventurous and to be a very active part of the world around them. So just really grateful for my association with the Nancy Drew stories.
And also I should add that besides being a voiceover actress, you are also a singer. So you have a lot of entertainment personality in you. So what led you to go ahead and say, hey, you know what, this might be a job for me later down the line?
Well, I was always using my voice since I was a child. I started singing in choirs with my mother and my grandmother and always enjoyed making up my own songs pretty effortlessly. And so when I had the opportunity as an adolescent to get involved in theater, musical theater and acting, I took right to it. And, really jump-started a career as a performing artist. And so enjoyed embodying different characters and using my voice in as many different ways as possible to create worlds and emotions. And my career evolved to the point where I realized I was also a recording artist. And I was lucky enough to have a friend who gave me a guitar and taught me 3 chords. And a year later, I had produced my own first CD of my own original music and was off on a path to, in addition to being a voiceover artist and an actor, I also found a really wonderful experience being a singer-songwriter, performing my own music. And that has evolved into doing a lot of teaching artists with a lot of children. I love to go into the schools and work with kids on using their voices to empower themselves. I like to use the phrase, your voice is your superpower, because when children understand that their words and their voice are their greatest source of power, then they realize that they can do anything that they want in their lifetime. And so I am just so grateful to find ever new ways to use the voice to invite other people to find their own power and identity and imagination through their own voices.
And speaking of finding your own voice, I know the Nancy Drew Company was looking for a couple of different characters. So when you heard about the initial audition for Secret of the Scarlet Hand, and this was for Poppy Dada. So when you heard about this initial audition, did you send like different variations of your voice over for, just to see what their feedback was, or how did that work?
Yes, I think we did a couple of different takes, and I was happy to see that they embraced a voice that, um, well, let's say, has echoes of a valley girl, which is where I come from. I grew up in California at a certain time, and there was a certain amount of that flavor of that flavor voice that they liked. And I was so excited. Poppy Dada is a young woman who is an artist and who's very, very expressive and very confident about herself. And so it was really fun to be able to breathe life into such a creative and also sassy young character.
You don't usually get that from a woman who's so empowered by her own artwork. And she was just a phone character, followed by Danger on Deception Island, which you voiced another, I think it was a scientist character named Irina. So she was another over the phone character. How did you develop her initial character?
Well, we knew she was Russian, so I had to dive deep um, into my dialect bag to find just the right tone for her. And that was it was sort of a really great contrast to Poppy Dada, because Irina's very, very buttoned up, business only, and her voice is very straightforward and doesn't have a lot of musicality to it. Business only. And it was just really fun to dive into a Russian dialect and play with a character like that.
Can you talk about working with a dialect, even if it's not even the Russian dialect? How do you kind of figure out how to make the perfect sounding voice? If it's somebody who's from Ireland or Scotland or the UK, how do you what is point A to point B for you?
Well, I love that question. I know it's different for every voiceover artist, but for me, I consider myself a chameleon of sorts. Whatever I take in, if I really take it in and listen and really absorb it into the cells of my being, then I have a pretty good chance of being able to duplicate it or represent it. And so for me, when I'm taking on any kind of a dialect or a voice, it's very different from my own. I study other voices. I also like to look at words, printed words, to see literally how they may pronounce them in their own language, just to understand that there are very different patterns, different levels of tension that one might use in your face, in your neck, in your voice, in the mouth, to create those different sounds. So for me, it's listening to a lot of different voices, both, person on the street sort of voices, as well as maybe finding popular entertainment and that represents characters of that dialect, and just really listening to them and letting them sort of marinate inside my own body, and then they seem to come pretty easily from there.
It's interesting because the next character, of course, is Charleena Purcell, and we hear her initially in The Secret of Shadow Ranch. She's also a phone character who grows into a physical character when we meet her in the last train to Blue Moon Canyon. So when they initially discussed this character, did you ever think that she would become a full flesh character in the next game?
I certainly didn't. I mean, professional actors and voiceover artists are, very much given what's in front of them to do, and to do it to their best ability. And whatever work I do, I try to just stay present in the moment of what I'm actually working on, because the key to future opportunities is to be as present as possible. And I had such a good time I remember it was a very short voiceover session that we did down near the Pike Place Market for Charleena, and I was so thrilled when I was called later to say that her character had expanded, And for Blue Moon Canyon, she had quite a bit more to say and to share and to be part of the game. And that was probably in terms of voices, Charleena's voice is probably closest to my own voice, if you compare to Poppy Dada and Irina. So it was fun to play Charleena. And I'm also a novelist, and so I enjoyed being able to call on my own experience as a writer and embody that in the character of Charleena.
She's so to the point in the games, which I feel like is she's putting it bluntly with whoever and whatever she's discussing, which is, I felt really helpful in the games because she's a no-nonsense person, but also she's trying to get the most out of the details around her surroundings, and because she's working on these novels that are romance novels, but she's so particular in having them be historically accurate. And I thought that was so interesting to have it in an author who is pursuing that and actually doing the research for it. So do you do that as well when you like to write?
Yes. I mean, research, the work that the novel that I've written was, based in World War II. And so I had to do quite a bit of research and was fairly obsessed for a number of years on gathering as many details as I could. And I am not as cut and dry, I think, as Charleena is in her approach. And I love it. There's one particular line that she and Nancy have where Nancy is asking her, about her approach, and Charlene is explaining sort of her passion for the way that she writes. And then Nancy says, well, I should probably let you get back to it. And she says something like, yes, that would be great. She's very straightforward on, she needs her time and her space for her creative process. And she doesn't apologize for it. But she also has, an openness and an accessibility that balances out her character quite nicely, I think.
And I hope you wouldn't mind. Would we be able to speak to Charleena? Because I have a couple questions for her if she's up for it.
Let me just grab her. Yeah, let me see. Oh, here she is right here.
Okay. Hi, Charleena. How are you?
I'm great, Tammy. How are you?
Oh, I've been a big fan of all of your novels for a while now, along with Nancy, and, since reading them since last Train to Blue Moon Canyon. And I really had a couple questions for you regarding, what inspired you initially to write. Did you have like a book that you grew up with when you were a young girl and just thought, this inspires me to pursue a career in writing?
Well, that is a very, very good question, Tammy. I have to say that one of the books that I read that really, really sparked my imagination and curiosity was the book A Wrinkle in Time. Are you familiar with that book?
Absolutely. It's one of those classics.
That's right. And so really it prompted me to ask so many questions about how could so many impossible things be possible. And the only way to answer such questions is to ask more questions.
That's a good point.
Right? And to dive deeper into the possibilities and the fact that there are so many possibilities in the universe that we can't even imagine unless we let ourselves just become so curious and so present. And so that really, really inspired me to begin asking questions of many things in my world around me. And I realized I was having an ongoing conversation with the universe, and soon it became a physical practice of writing down my questions and finding the answers. And then from there, it was just a very easy transition into actually finding these stories and writing them down. And it is my life's work that I'm very honored to embody and also share with you today, Tammy.
And you have so many romance novels, but I love the fact you pull history involved with the story, because I'm such a history buff myself. So I have to ask, is there one prominent historic figure that you have not written about that you would love to write? Maybe just focus on their life, not just their love life, but just on their life in general.
What a wonderful question. There's so many people that come to mind, but the first person that comes to mind for me is Eleanor Roosevelt. such an incredibly powerful person in our history, and somebody with such a complex romantic life. I feel that there is so many things that we don't know about Eleanor that if we knew, we would better understand ourselves in terms of how we love and why we love, and the ways that we influence people. And she had such an incredible influence on our society. It was such a wonderful beacon of an example of how everyone deserves a chance to discover who they are and to be the greatest version of themselves that they can be, no matter what their romantic or personal situation may be. I just think there is so much richness with her life and her story that I would love to write a book about Eleanor.
And for some of our listeners who have not gotten a chance to read one of your books, do you have a suggestion, maybe a title of a specific book that you think would be the perfect first Charlene book for them to read?
Oh, well, that's a great question, and I certainly appreciate it. I think that my book, The Red Hot Heart, would be a wonderful book for people to become introduced to my worlds and my style. It's full of passion, it's full of adventure, and our favorite, it's full of mystery.
Ooh, I like it. And what would happen if a movie producer, bought the book? Who would you want to see play the lead role of the female and the male character?
Wow, that is a very good question.
Maybe Julia Roberts might be a good one, or...
I love Julia Roberts. She's always been one of my favorites because she has so much integrity and so much emotional depth. And she just has a way of reaching audiences and, making them really just feel like they understand her. She's very accessible. I think she'd be a great, great person. What do you think about the man? I like your idea.
Well, I'm thinking because your novels don't shy away from having older women being included in the bunch of having having a romance, because so many films are just focused on the young ingenue, which is fine, but I like how you kind of steered that way. So Julia, she's she doesn't get a lot of movies nowadays like she used to when she was younger, so she would be great. I guess whoever worked against her, I know Hugh Grant did Notting Hill with her. Colin Firth, he is like such a heartthrob. I love him.
I love Colin Firth. I have a little crush on him, I have to say. Tammy, you and I are on the same page with these.
I love it too.
I love what you said about older women and older women characters as well. I mean, especially in the romance world. There is young love, and there is the idea of young romantic love, and the idea that we have in our society that, you find someone and they're perfect for you and you live happily ever after. But the reality is that love is a very, very complex agreement, and it takes a great deal of self-awareness and compassion and patience for the other person in order to truly have a successful love relationship. And so having an opportunity for older women and older women characters to embody what that means is of great value to our society, because the more that we understand that love is about showing up and staying and doing the hard work, the more compassionate we can all be for each other. And I think that we would have more realistic expectations about what love is and what we do with it.
But if one of your works you could transfer to the stage, is there anything in particular you would like to do or make an original piece? Because I feel like your women character characters are just so strong and have a mind of their own. It would be interesting to see how that would transfer to the stage.
Well, I have to tell you, once again, you have read my mind, Tammy. Um, I have been actually thinking for a while about possibly doing a musical. I think that there is a lot of opportunity. I have to tell you, I just saw the movie Mamma Mia 2 the other day. And when Cher came out at the end of the movie and sang, I had a realization that we need more strong, older women characters singing and telling their stories through music because it is magic. It is medicine. It makes people feel good and it is very powerful. And when you can put together the feelings of love and the complex, frustrating feelings that come with love, there is no better way than to represent them through song. So I think I'm actually going to start working on a brand new story. Rather than taking one of my existing books, I feel the need to start fresh and write a new musical. And I am very excited to share more about that with you in the near future when I have more to share.
Ooh, I can't wait. Thank you. Thank you so much for speaking with me and giving me a little glimpse into what might be in the future, because that would be thrilling. Maybe Cher might call you up and say, hey, I like this musical. I'd love to be in it. That would be fantastic.
That would be a dream come true, certainly.
Well, thank you so much, Charleena. I really appreciate your time.
Tammy, it has been such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for your wonderful questions.
Oh my gosh. She is so awesome. Isn't she, Julia?
Thank you, Charleena. Oh, she is. She is wonderful, isn't she?
Now, do you have you gotten a chance to play the actual game, to hear yourself in it?
Yes, and that is such a cool experience.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because you have a daughter, did you get to introduce her to the games too and see what her reaction was?
This is such a great timing because she just turned 8 years old. And so we are just getting her into the games. And so it's amazing. It's like going back in time and, sort of recording the game. But it's also just a totally new experience to experience it through her eyes and for her to feel a little bit more connected to it because her mom's voice is in it, right? But I'm so excited to be able to share with these games with her, and she loves mystery. She loves adventure and curiosity, and I just never dreamed when I did these voices the years back that I did them that I would one day be introducing my own daughter to the games. And so it's like a time release, benefit of being part of her interactive family is that I get to share it with my daughter and she gets to share it with her friends. And I can't wait to see where she goes with these games and how they influence her to, find her own adventures. I just want to say I'm so impressed with the community that her interactive has created, for all of the games. And it's so awesome to be able to see, through the social media and the blogs and everything else, to see all these wonderful young people just sharing so much enthusiasm and passion for the stories and sharing them with each other. It's wholesome, really, really good stuff that I'm just really proud to share with my own daughter.
And what have you been working on recently now? Are you still doing some voiceover work aside from also teaching and reaching out to so many new younger generations through music?
Yes, I do. I do still do. I like to do a lot of different narration projects, and I do an occasional character here and there. I am working I have a new band and we're working on a new CD and a lot of new music. And I'm also working in business settings with teams and leaders using the power of voice and the power of song to bring teams together and to work better together. So a lot of times that also means I'm putting on different voices to help bring people together and to encourage them to try on different voices themselves, to help them understand that we all have to understand the differences that we have and celebrate them so that we can work better together and have a more peaceful world. So any opportunity that I have to use my voice in order to help uplift people and to bring greater peace into the world is my path. And I am really grateful for the gifts that I've been given in this lifetime to work with the voice. And it's an incredible tool that we human beings have. And I intend to use it until I can't anymore.
I got to hear some of your singing on your website, which I want to mention to our listeners, www.juliafrancis.com. I will have it in the show notes as well. But you have such a gorgeous voice. So I'm so glad that you were out there performing and encouraging younger kids and spreading, your love through voice. It's one of those things that when you have that gift and you can spread it around, it just makes the world a better place in the long run. So, thank you again for being on this show. I had a great time talking with you. Finally, we get to chat on air, which is great. So, and my last question for you is, if you could describe your experience working with Her Interactive and being a part of the Nancy Drew universe using one word, what would that be?
The one word that comes to mind is inclusive, because I always felt so welcomed and appreciated in the work that I did. And the content that is actually created, I believe, really promotes a sense of inclusiveness for audiences and game players. And we need all the help we can get in this world to work together. So I am grateful to Her Interactive and the Nancy Drew Games for making me and so many people across this planet feel a part of something greater and to be inspired by being a part of it.